Granddad never mentioned that there were men as dark as this. Wow, look at that nose. He's just like a pig. He's a monster! Hi.
In today's episode, I'm joined by Iona from 30EverAfter. I want to thank you for joining me today and give you the opportunity to present yourself to the audience. So if you want, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a dating relationship coach. I mainly work with single women in their 30s to help them find their person in a healthy relationship.
All right. So I'll start off by asking, what are your thoughts on white male, Asian female couples?
White male, Asian female couples. Well, it's more common in major cities than your rural areas of town. You're seeing them a lot more, and people are just a lot more accepting of interracial couples. In Canada, where I'm from, it was already a thing before I left, and this was 10 years ago. And I think it's now just becoming more and more prominent in several neighborhoods, in several suburbs in Sydney.
Okay. Why do you think it's so popular?
I think pop culture is one thing. And I mean, we're a melting pot, especially in major cities where you just get a whole bunch of people from different cultures. But I also think there's a lot of influence around the media, you know, like in how Asian women are typically portrayed.
Okay. Yeah. In these relationships, do you feel as though it's the white men usually pursuing the Asian women or the Asian women pursuing the white men?
No, I think it goes both ways, especially in Western countries where, like, you know, you've got Bumble now, you know, that apps that promote females approaching males. So I don't necessarily think it's one way or the other.
Okay. Have you seen any Asian women harassed for dating specifically white men or not?
Yeah, I mean, Asian women cop it from their own culture, from their own families all the time, like for not marrying within their culture, you know, like especially the elderly, like coming from an Asian family myself, like I didn't have that same kind of pressure, but you know, the elderly, they want to be able to talk to their, you know, grandson-in-law in the same language. And when you bring a foreigner into the home, you don't know if they understand and respect your cultures, the mannerisms, you know, just all these little intricate things. And then of course there's a language barrier.
Yeah. And would you say the language barrier is probably the biggest part or to deal with, or?
Yeah, the language barrier, but just like, you know, really little things that like my husband and I have had to adapt. So for example, wearing shoes in the house. Mm-hmm. It's something so little, but it's like an Asian no-no to wear shoes into the house. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you weren't, like, it's such an Asian thing that I think you would get criticized if you didn't do it. But then if someone from a non-Asian culture may not have those same kind of things, like as house rules. That they wouldn't know. It wouldn't be their fault.
Do you think that when it comes to physical attraction, like they may be, or Asian women may be attracted to like features that are mostly white or European looking, or because you mentioned the media before?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually did an interview, I think with SBS, about the same topic, about how Asian men are portrayed in a certain way in the media. And, you know, in the media, they're always portrayed as, you know, the geeky types, the nerdy types. Whereas, like, you know, your white males always like the hero in all your like blockbuster films, all your action films. And so, yeah, I think that definitely has an influence.
Okay. I bring that up because this is the example I wanted to bring in. You know Lena Condor? She was in she's in a movie called To All the Boys I Loved Before. Yeah. She was the actress in that film. It was controversial because there were no Asian men as love interests, and it was mostly white men. I think there was one black guy, but mostly white men. And she talked to The Cut, which is, I guess, an online magazine. I'm not really sure. I think it's an online magazine. But she talked about how dating a light-skinned Cuban man was... The harassment that she received was similar to LGBT discrimination. I just wanted to bring a quote into it. My boyfriend in real life is Cuban, but he is very light-skinned. There are times when people online will say, of course she's with a white guy. Oh, so Asian people can only love Asian people? I can only be with my race? You are being racist unknowingly and continuing to put us in a box that we don't need to be in. It's really unfair. People should be able to love who they want to love. It's offensive to me you're continuing to promote tribalism. So I can't be with who I want to be with. These are probably the same people who have an issue with the LGBT community. It's the same thing. You telling me who I can love is unfair. It was, I guess it was controversial because the comparison was kind of weird, but she's been adopted. Her parents are Irish and Hungarian, so she's in that white society. So it may make somebody think that there's, I guess, some sense that dating a white guy is the only option because the media is portraying it this way, and if you're in white society, that's the only men that are out there. Is that something that you may see, or just like, what are your thoughts on that particular quote?
I think it also depends on where you live.
Yeah.
I mean, like where I grew up, there weren't a lot of Asians, so it really depends on your suburb. But it's also like a preference of personalities as well. Like someone who's grown up in a Western society might be more attracted to someone with Western lifestyle, Western cultures. And I think it comes down to the person and not what they look like. Sure, I think if you dated someone within your own race, it's a lot easier culturally if you're you're embedded in your Asian values. But the question was whether or not. What was the question?
The question was basically, do you think that because of what happens... Sorry, I wanted to bring a quote in. The original question was, do you think it may be easier for men to date Asian women if they have features that look white? And I wanted to bring that example to kind of like add to that original question. Because in Lena Condor's sense, she's dating somebody who isn't white, but he's Cuban and he's light-skinned. And she's comparing it to LGBT discrimination, which is, it may make seem like you're like she's defending something that may be something beyond love. Like, she has white parents. She was in a film that was for mostly white people. So yeah.
I think this has to do with you growing up with what you know to be attractive and how you define attractiveness.
Okay.
So I know in Asian cultures, for example, people with Asian women with Western culture, with Western features are deemed attractive. So they kind of reject, that's why a lot of them have eyelid surgery and like they have nose jobs to look like Western women. So I think it has everything to do with how you grew up with and what your perception of attractiveness is.
Okay. So moving on to a different subject. Do you think it may be more difficult for Asian women to date men of other races besides white, or do you think it doesn't really matter?
I don't think it does. I don't think it really matters.
Okay.
Especially in the bigger cities where it doesn't, especially if in a Western society you grew up with the same kind of values, especially if you grew up from a very young age. Okay. In the same schools, in the same environment.
Okay. The reason why
I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, okay. The reason why I bring that up is because because I've been pressing on white male, Asian female, there may be other instances where people who aren't Asian may struggle. And this is why I wanted to bring in a different quote. It's a little bit longer, but I think it's important. This is from a book called Asian Americans on Campus, Racialized Space and White Power. This is the quote. The Asian upbringing frames interracial skin hierarchy is compounded by an even stronger distaste for dark-skinned minorities, especially blacks and Latinos. Tom, a yellow self-identified senior, says that my dad literally sat me down one day out of the blue and was like, whatever you do, just don't bring home an Arab girl. Asian American parents often do not even consider other non-Asian people of color to be possible romantic partners for their children. Amanda, a first-generation Korean American first-year student, explains this of her familial expectations. I get the feeling that they would not like to see me with an African American or Hispanic boyfriend, although they have not told me so specifically. Whenever I tell them about a male friend, they always want to know if he's white or Asian. They never ask if he is African American or Hispanic. Amanda's parents did not even consider that someone she would be interested in dating might be black or Hispanic. When inquiring about possible partners, he can only be white or Asian. So, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that quote before I asked anything.
Yeah, I do think I do agree with that to some extent. So, I mean, hooking up, getting together with someone from another race on that level, taking the family element out of it, it shouldn't be any different. But once you want to make it serious or other families are involved, then I think that's when challenges can arise. And I think that quote is something that a lot of Asians can relate to. And it's not so much a race thing. I think it's just a misunderstanding of different cultures because it's so different from what traditional Asian families know, that I think there is sort of a stigma around dating someone that who's other than, well, a white male or an Asian person.
So it's not so much that the women would struggle with it, it's that their traditional parents would disapprove.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time it's that.
Okay. Next question, moving on to a slightly different topic. What are your thoughts on yellow fever and the preference that a non-Asian man may have for Asian women?
I mean, you're always going to have that. I do have a lot of friends who are white males and their preference is Asians. But it's that, like, they have embraced that, like, they don't just date Asian women for the sake of it. Like, they've embraced the whole culture. So, like, some Asian white males that I know who are my friends have more Asian traditions than I do. They have more Asian friends. They do, a lot of typical Asian things, a lot more than I do. And they embrace the whole culture. And so I don't judge them for it because they're embracing the culture as a whole, not just dating someone because they're Asian. And that tends to be their preference. My husband, he doesn't have yellow fever at all because he dated, he doesn't see color. Like, and you can see this from like his exes. They're all very, very different. So in his case, he really dated for the person. So I think it's a matter of their intentions. So why is it that, why is it that they date only Asian females? Mm-hmm. Is it because they're really interested in the culture? They grew up in Asian communities. It's what they know and what they find attractive. Or, do they date them because of certain Asian stereotypes? Or, maybe it's like novelty.
Okay.
Yeah. Because sometimes it could be that.
So basically it's a matter of, like we were mentioning before, when an Asian woman could grow up in a certain society and then just be attracted based off of that. It could be a white guy that's grew up in liked Asian culture and could be attracted based off of that as well. Right?
Yeah. And they don't just like Asian women. They like everything that the Asian culture offers, like the food, the activities. They celebrate like the holidays, Chinese New Year, all that stuff.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I definitely don't think so.
Okay. It's just, I guess, just the way you go about it.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of talk when I lived in Japan in 2005. And, as foreigners, you go in a group and you go and teach English in these different cities. And, a lot of my male colleagues ended up with Japanese partners. And there was a little bit of stigma around, like, white guys who couldn't find a girlfriend in their home country, so then they go to Asia to find one. But I don't see it that way at all. I see it as they moved to a country, they love the country, and they loved everything about it. So why not love the women as well? Like, it was so normal to me.
Okay. Couple more questions. Let's say you have somebody who is non-Asian that prefers Asian women, and it's a turn-off for some Asian women just because of the fact that he likes Asian women. Yes. But he finds somebody that's attracted to him, and they have to deal with resistance from the parents or the friends, and that causes conflict in the relationship. What advice would you give to a person in that position?
So the person who has to basically get their family involved.
Yeah, so let's say they have a preference, right? And this preference is a turn-off for some Asian women because it's like, oh, you have yellow fever, right?
Okay. Yep.
So that a huge chunk of them leave because of that. Of the ones that are attracted to him, he has to deal with resistance from the parents, which causes him to have issues dating these particular women. What advice would you have for men in that specific position?
I mean, that's get to know their cultures. So if they have a preference for Asian women, for example, and they know what to expect when going to visiting a family's home, like for example, taking off the shoes or bringing something over, or like even learning how to do the use the chopsticks. So as long as there's a willingness to learn and adapt the culture, and try to get over the language barrier, I don't see that would make waves in overcoming that little hump.
Okay. And because you did a video about MGTOW, overall, just not even about race, like what advice would you have for men who are in MGTOW and have given up on dating?
Gosh, none, because I did that video as an educational piece to women who may or may not know that term was going on, and I basically got slammed by all these men who were adopting this lifestyle, and they all have different varying degrees on how they choose to adopt that terminology. So I don't have any advice for them.
Okay. They're too far gone.
It's obviously it's a decision that they've made. They don't want any women involved, it seems like. So I don't have any comment other than good luck.
Okay. Those are all my questions. I don't know if you had anything else to add, but if not, I wanted to thank you for collaborating with me on this particular subject.
Yeah, good. It's a really interesting subject. That like it's a nice compliment to an interview I did recently, which talks about Asian men and how they're disadvantaged in the dating pool.
Okay. Yeah, that's also an issue as well, because Asian men, if they see Asian women dating outside of their race, they may get angry about that because they deal with certain stereotypes about not being, I guess, masculine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all these stereotypes come from the media.
Yeah.
In a way, it's shaped our preferences when it comes to dating.
Yeah. I would agree with that, unfortunately.